So hello, everybody. My name is Alan Levin, and this is another in a series of interviews, conversations that I have had with people where the focus is on crossing boundaries. People who are doing really good work in the world, who have uh, somehow changed in some ways, maybe their belief systems, their sense of identity, their spiritual orientation, religious orientation, and in crossing that boundary have learned lessons that they can pass along to others. So I'm really happy today to be talking with my longtime friend, Sita Lozoff. And I think we've known each other for over 50 years. And we have crossed paths many different times. And so let me read just a brief part of a bio that comes from an interview that Sita did a while back with the Moon magazine. And it's an excellent interview, and I will pass along the information linking to that and to Sita's website with the Human Kindness Foundation, along with this podcast and YouTube. So Sita Lozoff is the spiritual director of Human Kindness Foundation, whose primary work is the Prison Ashram Project. The project encourages incarcerated men and women to use their time in prison for spiritual growth, as if they were living in an ashram. Sita and her late husband, Bo, began the Prison Ashram Project in 1973 as part of spiritual leader Ram Dass's Hanuman Foundation. In 1987, they founded Human Kindness Foundation to continue the work. Over the last 40 years, the Human Kindness Foundation has published and distributed spiritual books by Bo Lozoff and others. The books are free for men and women behind bars, and Bo's book, We're All Doing Time, which the Village Voice called one of the 10 books everyone in the world should read, that's a pretty powerful statement, is in the 21st printing with 500,000 copies in print. And I will say that I often recommend that book to people that I work with as a psychotherapist. And I love the idea that we're all doing time, which is just a great understanding that people in prison, really know clearly that they're locked up somehow, that they're in a prison, that they have bars that they see 24/7. Many people, many of us on the outside, don't realize the kind of imprisonment we're in through our mental constructs and beliefs that we have. So it's great to interview you, Sita, and I will try to, in our conversation, cover some things that maybe haven't been in the interviews you've done in the past. But let's start with your personal life story, your childhood. What was your life like as a child, and do you feel, the values or beliefs that you took on, or that were just part of the milieu of where you were growing up?
Well, it's interesting that you just used the word values, because I don't think I was given any values at all. Basically, I grew up in a family of atheists who were really, from that generational thing, how could there be a God who would allow Hitler? And my favorite aunt, would light candles on Friday night, and my family would make fun of her. So I would say, unfortunately, I think I might have gotten a negative take on religion, Judaism, anything like that growing up. I mean, basically, my father only had to bring money home and keep us supported. And I don't think I ever had a slightly deep conversation with my mother. It's not something we did, and I don't think my friends did either. I think it was that kind of thing. I grew up I was born in South Philadelphia, but we moved to Northeast Philadelphia to a row home when I was just 6 years old, in a very completely Jewish neighborhood. I mean, there were 60 houses on my block, 30 on each side, and one corner across the street had Christmas lights. And my high school was completely Jewish as well. So I just never thought about it at all. I do remember that once as a young teenager, I dressed up and went downtown Philadelphia during Christmas to just feel the energy of people shopping for Christmas and that kind of thing, just to get that kind of feeling in me. But basically, I grew up without religion, without values, to tell you the truth. I know you just used that word, but I don't think we were given anything like that.
You would, with many Jewish families who were not at all religious, even atheists, had the kind of secular values that are associated sometimes with the Jewish world, of contributing to the world, or helping the underprivileged and things like. Your family, it sounds like,
Not at all, not at all, Alan. As a matter of fact, as I got older and started to have those values, my mother said to me, "Charity begins at home." She very clearly, she actually did not approve of my lifestyle and what I had chosen, my calling.
Yeah.
I never got anything like that from either of my parents.
Yeah.
Really. So it was pretty. I wouldn't even just say negative. We just didn't talk about it. Anything.
So in effect, you did somehow make a major change in your life. You crossed some kind of boundary from a sort of valueless, or certainly not spiritual, lifestyle to one that you've embraced and are a model for many people in the world, of giving and sharing and helping others, and doing it with a very spiritual orientation. So would you say there's a sense of how that evolved for you in adolescence or in young adult, or how did you make that change?
Well, I remember that at some point I would take the train with a friend from Philly to New York, and I was very attracted to the village, very attracted. And I remember at one point I even bought a book on Buddhism, not because I read it, but because I apparently saw somebody in the village doing that kind of thing. I ended up going to the University of Miami because I couldn't wait to get out of Philadelphia, and they accepted me. I think they probably accepted everybody in those days, and that's where I met Bo. And the first evening that we met, we talked about Salinger and maybe some Hess books, that kind of stuff, and that really interested and excited me. I mean, I didn't know that I had found the one for me, even though we got married just a few months after that.
Just a few months
after we met, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So the spark really lit very quickly.
I guess so. I guess so. I don't know. It's probably true. There was somebody who could begin to talk a language that I was just starting to become familiar with, and interested and excited me. And we, we just moved along. Bo was in pre-med at the time, which thrilled my parents, because even though they were pretty secular, no question about it, it was very important that I married somebody Jewish. And the fact that he was in pre-med, you can double or triple that
Be a
feeling.
doctor.
He's going to be a doctor. And they were heartbroken when we both dropped out. It was University of Florida, and we both dropped out of there because Mike was doing, my brother-in-law Mike was organizing farm workers in Immokalee, Florida, and he said, "Why don't you guys see if you can do some school support?" And so we started what we called at that time the Farm Worker Support Committee, without thinking at all that a lot of the people who went to that school were the people who were abusing those farm workers, exploiting them and taking advantage of them. And one morning we found our motorcycle tank filled with sugar. And we felt we better get out of there. We better get out of there before
Out of Gainesville.
Before we get hurt.
Yeah, because many of the students were of the families who were the big farm owners who were exploiting these farm workers. Is that
exactly?
I see. Yeah.
You know, that's what
at the time, Gainesville was a very conservative place, and most students were very conservative. That's changed a lot, as you probably know.
Oh yeah, I follow it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Mike, in the meantime, had gone up to North Georgia, where he was organizing. There was something called the Southern Labor Action Movement, and he was organizing women who were making Levi's in this company-owned city. I think it was called Blue Ridge, Georgia.
Right.
And you know, we were already finished with University of Florida, so we went up there to join them. And so they said, "Why don't you guys go to Northern California and see if you could get the Jefferson Airplane to make an anti-Levi commercial?" They had just made a Levi commercial, and which you can still find on YouTube. I looked it up fairly recently.
This was 1967. 67, yeah.
67, and you know the big thing that happened in 1967, we happened to go to Northern California during the Summer of Love, and the first mind-blowing experience of our lives. I mean, it was really intense. Probably the first time we took LSD was there. And we came back to Atlanta, Georgia, and started the first head shop in the South.
Well, let me just pause you there for a second. So, how would you describe the effects on you of your experience, that experience, or maybe other experiences along the way with LSD and other psychedelic substances? Was that a big part of the boundary crossing changes that you were going through?
Absolutely. There's no question about that. And I actually think, let me see. So we came back, started the head shop, took a lot of LSD during that period, 1967, 68. It was the year that Martin Luther King was killed, and the big service for him was in Atlanta. I mean, it was huge, and people were coming in and all that. But we were basically just taking LSD and trying to run our store as best we could. And I honestly believe that the most important thing that happened to me during that time, why it was really important for me to take LSD at that time, is that it's the first time that I mean, in the beginning, we were just taking it for fun. You know, we would have pleasure. We would have pleasurable experiences. But slowly, things started sinking in. And for the first time, I was able to get a feeling that this is not a chaotic universe. there's some purpose, there's some meaning, there's something going on in this universe that I never thought about. I never, perhaps Salinger and Hess, started me thinking on that. But LSD definitely took me there. And I believe, Alan, that it set me up for the most the biggest life expanding experience of my life. I don't think that I would have been as blown away by the book Be Here Now if I had not started by taking LSD in those days and started opening the door. I think that's the big thing that happened to me, and that to me was the birth of my spiritual awakening. Was really Be Here Now.
Yeah.
And I really thank LSD
I think
for
it was for a lot of people.
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah. So you went to California with Bo on somewhat of a political mission, political, cultural, perhaps, but the mission involved this labor organizing that was going on, and migrant workers and so forth, and getting the support of the Jefferson, trying to get the support of Jefferson Airplane to help with the movement. And you ended up taking LSD, experiencing the summer of love, the whole counterculture. In those days, I was there too, and I know that many people felt like you either went in the direction of psychedelics and all of what that represented in spirituality and hippie lifestyles, or movement activity, political activity, fighting the system and so forth. Did that seem like a split to you, or did it when you chose to open the head shop and take a lot of LSD, was that a choice in that sense?
I think we were definitely looked down on by some of our former friends who were more radically involved. But by that time, we didn't give a shit. I mean, we just we wanted to move in the direction that we were moving, that felt joyful for the first time, and exciting, adventurous, and we just it didn't matter. We were moving in that direction, and we kept moving in that direction. Yeah.
And it always was very collaborative, it sounds like, or it wasn't like one of you was pulling one way and one was pulling the other way. You both kind of joined together in what you were doing. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely true. But the truth is that I mostly followed Bo. I mean, I came from a place where my father said, don't let anybody see you, don't stand out in a crowd, don't do anything like that. And I love the fact, that this person who promised me the first night that I met him, never a dull moment. He promised me that. I mean, I've craved dull moments every now and then in my marriage, but I came from a very dull family, and that just thrilled me. And I would say that we were collaborative because I just followed him. I just followed what he was doing, and with some kind of trust that it was going to continue to be right. Even when much later, when we were on a sailboat together, we were in a sailboat in a hurricane in the ocean. And
Well,
I just
back up a little bit. How did
Yeah,
that
yeah,
happen?
that's another one.
So you were at the head shop in Atlanta, and then you were on a sailboat.
Okay, yeah, we'll move on from the head shop. We didn't stay there long because Lester Maddox was governor of Georgia, and he made it very clear that he was going to get those hippies out of there. I mean, we were hippies in those days. There's no question about it. And there were a lot of people, especially in the South, who did not want the hippies there. So so we bought a couple vans and took 8 or 10 hippies with us, and we went to Northern California, Russian River area, and parked one of our vans there, and stayed there for a little while until Bo's father was dying and we were called back. I hope I have the chronology right about all this. I could be off somewhat, but obviously I remember being with you during that period.
Yeah, we were both in Northern California then, right? I
Yeah.
lived in Gurneyville and Jenner. And,
We lived in Gurneyville Park.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were there a little while and then came back and was with the family in Miami and helped his father die, and then try to decide what to do next. And that's when we started thinking, both started thinking, what do I love doing? And one of the things was sailing, and we went down to the docks and signed on a sailboat that took cruises out. The captain was hoping to build up enough money to sail around the world, but he got tired of doing that kind of thing, and made a deal with another family member to import a lot of marijuana, a lot of it. And
South America?
From where was it? Jamaica.
Jamaica.
We were gonna sail to Jamaica, pick up all this pot and bring it back, and he was going to sell it. And I had an I Ching experience that said, don't do it. Just don't do it. So because of our loyalty to the captain, we did go down with him, but we flew home and he got busted. And the family member also got busted. And so
well, in that case, you took the position that guided you guys.
You're right. Thanks for noticing. That's exactly right. And I'm so glad Bo listened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is what happened. And so we got that's where the hurricane thing happened, was on that sailing from Miami to Jamaica. We were caught in a late season hurricane, and it was very frightening, but I really had faith, if I was with Bo, that nothing bad was going to happen to me. And at one point we had to turn into Cuba, or else we were really going to die. There was no question about it. And we had a lovely experience in Cuba. They were very kind to us, kept bringing us hands of bananas, and it was, it was, and it was during the period where you absolutely could not, it was very, and I guess that's the period that you went down there, or not.
Yeah, it was 68.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So we came back, and we flew back, and that family member got busted, and did federal time. He got 12 to 40 because he did it actually 2 times. He got probation the first time, and then he thought, I'm just going to do it again and not get caught this time. So the judge didn't like that at all.
Sure.
And he did 12 to 40, and Bo and I, and at that point, our young son, who was 2 years old, Josh was 2 at the time, drove up to Terre Haute and visited him. And that was the first time we ever stepped into a prison. First time ever. And there was some kind of feeling that on the way home, Bo said, I'm not sure what this all means, but I feel some kind of connection to people in prison. We'll see how this plays out. I'm not really quite sure what happens.
Yeah.
What that means. So that was the summer that we read Be Here Now. And we invited Ram Dass to come down to Durham, North Carolina and speak at Duke. 73. Josh was 2 years old. And he did. And while he was here, he said, I've been putting copies of Be Here Now in prison libraries all over the country. And I'm starting to get responses from people in prison. And I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. And Bo said, we'll take them. We'll take your letters.
So you had a personal connection with him right then. That was the first time you'd met Ram Dass?
That was the first time
you invited him down. You were sort of facilitating or coordinating his speaking engagement, but he met with you personally, and
he stayed with us.
Stayed with you.
Yeah. And that
you were aware of him and his renown. I mean,
not really. I guess not. And Bo had a lot of guts. Anyway,
that's for sure. I mean,
that's for sure. That was still part of Never a Dull Moment. It was, he had.
I want to say it's very refreshing, to hear you be so honest and candid in this time of women's liberation and beyond, and to acknowledge that at least at that time in your life, you were very submissive and receptive and on the willing to be led by a strong male figure that you trusted and admired, and must have seen his vision as being important to go with.
I don't think I don't know that I saw his vision as being important. I think I just followed him, I didn't reflect on it deeply enough to think of it as his vision, that kind of thing. And I love the fact that you find it refreshing, by the way.
Yeah.
I just followed it. I just followed it. I didn't know what else to do. And my life was starting to become interesting and exciting. I didn't know that I ever thought that was going to be possible, considering how I grew up.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. So the Prison Ashram Project was born 50 years ago this year.
So that started with Ram Dass's blessing and encouragement that you would then go into prisons yourselves.
Not yet. It started very slowly and organically. I mean, we did the letters.
How did it go?
We started with the letters very, very slowly. Ram Dass gave us money out of his pocket for sending mail out. We might have been sending Be Here Nows, but I don't remember. But doing postage and things like that. And then Bo wrote a very small book that he called Inside Out, that included basically some letters back and forth between him and prisoners. That was the first thing that he wrote. It was a very sweet book.
Yeah.
And Ram Dass, in his lectures all over the country, he was definitely, as a result of Be Here Now getting very popular, he would pass out a little card that had a picture of Neem Karoli Baba, our guru, on one side, and the other side, it had a couple of addresses: the Living Dying Project, the Prison Ashram Projects, Oxfam, I believe.
Save
Yep.
Us, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe Seva hadn't started yet. I think it might have been before that, but maybe so. anyway, so he was promoting us by
Yeah.
passing out those cards to everybody that would go to these projects. So the project kind of took up by donations,
Mhm.
small, of course, in the beginning, but there it was. We were getting donations, and I think pretty slowly we started visiting. There was a prison quite near us at Butner, Federal Correctional Institute, and Bo went down there and said, "Can we come and teach mindfulness there?" And they said yes. And we actually brought 2-year-old Josh with us, and they babysat him in a different room. We're with these prisoners. They babysat him in a different room while we would do this class. I mean, it was very sweet and
Yeah.
very innocent. It didn't even occur to us to think, but wait a second, we're leaving our dear little boy in the hands of somebody we didn't even know what they did, uh, but it worked, and we were there for quite a while, and we started. We taped some of the stuff, and we would send out audio tapes, and then we found somebody who would do some yoga regarding our tapes, and perhaps another book. So it began in that way. It was an amazing class. I still remember a couple of the people in that group.
So you really started dedicating your life to a particular kind of work. Was there any, did you get donations enough to support yourselves that way, or how did?
Well, at some point, I believe, and as again, I'm not remember. It was a long time ago. I'm not remembering it
The same way.
perfectly clearly.
Yeah.
But I know we had some cottage industries in the little farm that we had. I was growing broccoli plants, for instance, before anybody grew broccoli plants, and we boarded horses. So we were
I
making our
remember at
way.
one
We
time you
lived.
guys got into making wooden toys.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bo did that right to the end, made wooden toys. He
So you-
really, and he was very good to it. It ruined his hearing, but he wasn't wearing air protectors.
Say something a little bit about the letters that it all started with, because in a way I found those letters to be some of the most moving and beautiful teachings that are around. These letters between men who were saying, I raped somebody or I killed somebody and I just feel guilty forever. How can I ever, you know, deal with that? And all found ways of responding that were very profound. That,
In the
but your
very,
take on it, that's what I'm really asking.
yeah,
That's my
and I
take.
have one.
Uh-huh.
In the very beginning of this process, Ram Dass gave us a practice, and he said it's very important that you honor the blood at your feet as well as the snow on top of the mountain. For instance, we should not just go past the suffering and get to, this is perfect. He says it's important that you feel it, that you feel it first, and then once. And I still cry over some letters, and I still do that practice. But the snow on top of the mountain, to us, to me especially, had to do with God's perfection in the world. And it was important that we move to that space, because that's why people were writing us. They didn't want us to just commiserate with them. And Alan, I found that one of the LSD experiences that I had actually set the set the place for that kind of thing that actually happened to me. I had an experience on LSD where I would feel immense suffering and start crying very hard. And then I'd feel immense joy and happiness and beauty and start laughing and smiling. And Alan, this lasted for hours. For hours. I would go back and forth and back and forth. And just recently, I realized that that kind of set me up for this practice that Ramdas gave us. I mean, that was particularly my experience on LSD. The people I were with were kind of just watching me and hoping I was okay.
Yeah, yeah, you didn't have a framework beforehand to think or to understand that what later came to you from Ramdas was a kind of teaching that could describe what that experience was.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I just, I
It
feel
was-
very guided. I feel like there has been guidance for me, and that particular trip was definitely guidance. It was beautiful, and it really helped me do what I still do today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Could you say a little bit more about what you do now, like, and how maybe that's changed since Bo's tragic death? I know he was in a motorcycle accident in 2012,
That's right.
and how you were the follower, as you put it. Maybe that evolved somewhat during the
Yeah.
time before he died, and then afterward, you, in a sense, took the realm, the helm, the
Yeah.
reins of the organization.
Well, for the most part, it became important to us, especially after Bo was gone, that we needed an executive director. We needed somebody in operations. We needed somebody who would run things because we had gotten pretty large. We're 30,000 people in prison right now, and 500,000 copies of We're All Doing Time. So we needed somebody to run the details
What do you
of
mean
this project, and I
30,000?
did it a little.
What was the number 30,000? 30,000 is what?
30,000 people on our people in prison now on our mailing list.
Oh, okay. Because there's a lot more people in prison that
Oh, yeah,
that's a
and
whole
our
other
books
issue.
are clearly
Yeah,
shared by a lot of people. I honestly feel that more than a million, maybe even a couple million people have seen our main book, We're All Doing Time.
yeah,
The way books are shared, and that we've got 500,000 out there, so it's all over the place.
yeah,
I get letters all the time. I saw it. Send me one. You
yeah.
know, that
I mean,
kind of
when
that
I've
kind.
run into, in one context or another, anyone that's been in prison, I always ask, have they seen that book? And generally the answer is yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw. Maybe they read it, maybe they didn't read it, but they
Right, right. Yeah, I
it came
love that.
through their attention. Yeah.
Right.
So you needed an executive director, and with a big organization. Was
I
that
was doing
you?
it mostly with help. I was co-director with somebody who we were with, and it got to a point where I really felt like, and my co-director also felt like I needed to really focus entirely on this mail. First of all, people were writing to us, hoping, that they would get something back from A. Lozoff, after they had seen the book, and so it became pretty clear that that there were other people in our organization to take care of a large organization, to work on keeping it going, to fundraise, to do things that it takes to keep an organization to go. And basically, I've been able to really devote my life, and I really mean that, to writing to people in prison. I'm now spiritual director, We have a new, and when I say new, about a year and a half, executive director, Erin Parrish. Um, she's in her mid 40s and she's young and she brings all this young energy to this office that started so many years ago. I mean, I love it. I really do. I love the feeling of walking into the office with her there at the helm. And she, she and our operations manager, Kristen, just keep those details going. And I'm basically, for the most part, writing to people in prison. I answer the phone too, which is, you know, um, makes people happy that that I'm doing that as well, which is completely fine with me. I'm willing to let people feel the feeling of that good feeling of opening the heart when they know that I'm still there and I'm still doing the same work, and they love it.
Sita, many people say that, if you're going to work with people who have drug addictions, you need to have been a drug addict. If you are an alcohol, same with alcohol, or if you need to work with people who were prisoners and have committed terrible or not so terrible different crimes that got them in prison, you need to have had that experience. Now you do this work, and Bo did it beautifully, I think. I'm not questioning that, but how do you find the what's inside you that resonates and can allow you to have the empathy and compassion that has the understanding of where these folks are coming from and what they need to hear?
That's a great question. And well, we put out newsletters 3 times a year, and we have one particular newsletter. I interviewed this, and he's, and in AA, you're supposed to be anonymous, so I'm not going to give his name.
And anybody can get that newsletter if you write to the Human Kindness Foundation.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I interviewed him for that purpose of being able to answer the question, what do I do to turn my life around as an addict? And as well as giving people my love and blessings, we have prayer lists. I actually send that newsletter to them and say, this person coming from that space may be able to help you more than I can. And he may even write to you if you want that kind of connection. So I am not completely just writing to addicts and telling them what to do from a space of not being an addict myself. I will set somebody up with somebody who I feel like is more of an authority in that way.
And specifically on drug addiction, but you do write to people who have had experiences that you've never had, and people who've murdered people and things like that, and yet you do find in yourself and so I'm just asking, can you describe where that comes from?
Let me pause.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my intuition tells me that it is somehow connected to my understanding of karma and reincarnation, which is an important, a very important part of my life. And so I'm able, when I get this letter from someone who is suffering so much as a result of the harm they have brought into the world, I can feel it. I go there very very deliberately and feel that person's suffering, and then pretty much help them with We're All Doing Time, which will give them practices and ways to actually turn their lives around. And we have a huge section on karma in We're All Doing Time, because it was so meaningful to Bo, and it's completely meaningful to me right now. And that once people, first there's a lot of pain thinking that they have brought some intense suffering for their future. But they know that there's a way to not continue to bring more pain into the world, and that they will benefit from it personally if they actually change their direction, you know. And so I'm leading people in that direction. Does that pretty much answer that question?
Sure, sure. It definitely moves in that direction. And when you speak of how do you think the understanding of karma, which many people have in a very superficial way, they refer to karma, but how do you feel like what you've learned from all your teachers and teachings that you've studied and meditation, understanding karma can help a person who has committed acts of violence or has been abused by others?
Yeah. Um, I think it's important for people to know that they are in control about their future, by their choices. Their hopefully more unselfish choices. I mean, I remember telling Ram Dass, you know, that, you know, I don't know if the people we send our books to are necessarily going to become spiritual, go to church or whatever. But I think they're going to stop hurting people. I think a lot of them, maybe, you know, a great many of them will no longer, you know, make that choice in their life. And considering the horror that so many of them have been through, that's a big thing to do in one lifetime. I mean, if they can just do that in a lifetime, that's a big move, really big.
Yeah, that's a wonderful perspective on it. That in fact, what karma's, a lot of people think of karma, and they're looking back at the past. You're looking at it as, well, you're creating the future right now. What you're doing right now is creating your future and the future of whoever you're affecting. Yeah.
In a book that I was reading this morning, it's actually a novel. I love spiritual novels.
Which one?
A book I was reading, it's called Instant Karma. The Day the World Changed. I don't even remember. I have a Kindle, so I forget the names of books. Um, but the teacher in the book said the reason that that more people don't get into karma is because it doesn't happen in an instant way. It's a future life thing for the most part. So there's has to be a lot of faith and trust in the fact that the choices they're making now will affect life sometime in the future. And as I said, I totally believe in reincarnation, and you know, so that's important to me. And I try to talk to people inside about it, the people who are ready for it and are asking me things about it. I do the best I can.
Yeah.
It's hard when it's not instant.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things you focus on in this most recent newsletter that you've sent out, or the Human Kindness Foundation has sent out, is forgiveness. And that's a huge issue for, I think, everyone really, but especially people who have been at one or both ends of an abuse situation. And can you talk a little bit about your teachings about forgiveness and what you've learned about it yourself and along the way?
Well, the Dalai Lama talks about what he calls selfish unselfishness. He calls it selfish unselfishness. So basically, what I have learned about forgiveness and experienced myself personally is that when I'm able to forgive, my heart changes. I feel better. I actually feel better. And I'm trying to help people get that one. I remember when Bo and I were doing a workshop in California, there was a guy sitting against the wall in the back, and he had one leg. And after the workshop, he came up to me and he said, a guard actually shot off his leg. I mean, the horror of it. He said, nobody would blame me if I
Mhm.
if I were bitter and angry my entire life, but I'm tired of being bitter and angry. I wanna move on. I want to find some happiness in my life. And so we talked about forgiveness. We talked about the possibility that he could open the door in that kind of way. And once again, if you're focusing somewhat on karma and reincarnation, what that poor guard has to go through in a future life, and there's even some movement towards compassion towards the person that harmed him. It's not easy stuff, and I don't say it to people in a way that in a flip kind of way. I say it, are you ready to do this kind of work? I will help you. You can write me, and sometimes you can even call me. There are people that have some kind of tablets now that have phones, and they can get books. And there's a lot of, I'll talk about that a little more a little later. But there are people who call me, and I will help them do something that is excruciatingly hard. You know how compelling, justifiable uh, harm is. Justifiable anger. You know how compelling. I mean, you can stay stuck in it your whole life, but you're going to be miserable your whole life if you choose to stay there your whole life.
So, I'm really interested to hear that more about when you say you work with them. So the ideas are clear, and we can get a cognitive sense of how forgiveness is a helpful path for us. But like you said, the visceral feelings of anger, rage, guilt, shame are very, very, very deep. And I know for myself, there are yogic practices and energy work and prayer and healing work that can be brought to bear. Is that what you mean by you actually work with some of these folks when they're on the phone, or with that kind of guidance to do that kind of inner work? Is
Well, I don't specifically, I mean, I will turn them to practices in the book, which
uh-huh.
are designed in so many ways to help you feel compassion,
Mm.
which is a key to who I am today. I mean, I made that leap of faith when Ram Dass said, and the Dalai Lama, who is a huge mentor of mine. I love everything that he's said, and it's basically so much of it is feeling compassion, and especially when it's hard.
Yeah,
You really,
Kubo got to be with the Dalai Lama for a bit, didn't
that's
you?
right. I'll tell you how that happened if you'd like.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. We might as well just go with the flow of things. So.
um, at one point, we got a letter from a man inside who asked us the question of should he risk his life in a dorm situation in prison to keep somebody from getting raped. I mean, literally risk his life. And neither Bo nor I felt qualified. How do you answer? How do you do that? How do you take responsibility? How do you do that? So we wrote 3 letters. One letter to Swami Chidananda in Rishikesh, who we loved, and he's gone now too. He was a big supporter of ours. And one was to Thich Nhat Hanh, and another one was to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And we did not hear from the first 2, but we got a fax from the office of the Dalai Lama, and basically saying His Holiness feels like this is too sensitive and intimate. Can you come to Dharamsala and have a conversation with him about it? And I would say within an hour, I had reservations made. I was completely thrilled and excited. This was our first trip to India, and to have that kind of invitation and to be looking forward to this meeting, of someone who I loved and trusted so deeply in that kind of way, was amazing.
How did he answer the question?
Well, funny you should ask that, because we didn't get back to it. We never got to the question. He asked us about our work and what we were doing, and we made promises to him about being transparent role models. And he asked us to be that, and we said yes. And he wrote the foreword to We're All Doing Time, one of the printings of We're All Doing Time. So, I feel like anybody who picks up a copy of We're All Doing Time gets his blessing as well, right from the start. But we never did actually get back to that question. And Alan, I have no idea how we answered it, or if we answered it. I have not the slightest idea at all how that happened.
Right. There are a lot of questions of that ilk that I saw Bo finesse his way through very skillfully.
Right. Yeah.
People in prisons are in very difficult situations, not only dealing with their inner process of guilt or rage or whatever they're feeling, but just the reality of what they have to face is so
horribly hostile in so many cases. But Ram Dass also told us early on that, considering that, our lives are, we have all the support you can imagine, and we still find this thing compelling, and that, we still get stuck. He said, if people can do the work in that kind of hostile environment, they are able to purify a lot of negative karma. Which is really, wonderful, because a lot of them have done some pretty horrible things. So I trust that. I believe that is indeed the truth. That people are, and they get plenty of opportunities to be kind and compassionate inside. That somebody. I have one of my dear friends who I'm working with right now gave me this mala, is on death row in Central Prison, trans, and she has a tablet, and so she calls frequently. I talk to her very frequently, and she says, I'm having some trouble in this situation. This man betrayed me. And what do I do? Can you help me figure out the best way karmically to deal with this? So I'm able to work in that kind of way, and it's fantastic for both of us.
Yeah, beautiful. Along the lines of your own spiritual practice, I know you've in a sense adopted or became a disciple of Neem Karoli Baba, Ram Dass's guru, but never having gone to India to meet him when he was alive, in form, in physical body. Does that still really meaningful to you? And did you feel at the time that that was a choice you made based on an experience or following Ram Dass, or how would you describe that?
Well, I would feel like my connection to Neem Karoli Baba has deepened so much. I talk to him all during the day. I ask for his blessing when I go to the supermarket, when I'm going to be with my family. I talk to him all the time. I would say originally, he was in Be Here Now, and Bo probably made the first connection because he used to have dreams about him when he was a little boy, and his father first had a stroke. He was 9 years old, and he had a dream about what he called his magic man.
Uh-huh.
And when he saw those pictures in Be Here Now, when we connected with Ram Dass, he said, "This is my magic man. This is the man who saved me
Uh-huh.
when I was a child." And so, at that point, it was pretty easy to bring, to trust Bo, to trust Ram Dass. I don't know that I could say I've ever had that I've had a strong personal experience, but what I have is tremendous amount of faith. Um, and I don't know, I almost feel like I was born with it. I mean, faith has always been a big one for me, that once I have started in some kind of way, I don't question a lot. I don't have, I'm not skeptical. I don't have my doubts. And more than ever, that's true, Alan.
Yeah.
And Neem Karoli Baba is helping me as my guide in that way.
Yeah. And you've kind of opened more to the Christian transmission or Jesus's transmission, I understand. Is that?
It's true. It's true. As a matter of fact, this most recent holiday, I ended up celebrating Easter. I found, and I thought that's interesting to me. I never felt the connection with Judaism that I actually got. I mean, one of the things I actually did on this holiday was watch the miniseries called Jesus of Nazareth that was first out in the world in 1977. That's the first time I watched it. I watch it on Christmas. I watch it on Easter, and I feel and have felt that the person who portrayed Jesus in that video, Robert Powell, I just felt the Holy Spirit through him. I don't know how else to put it. But I get that feeling every time I watch it. It just keeps coming back to me in that same way. And so yes, and I've had, as you even know, I've had a connection with Saint Francis, and that came from a book, the book written by Cousin Zakis. And I might actually end up going to Assisi this fall. I haven't done really pretty much any traveling at all since the pandemic, but I'm considering making some kind of pilgrimage to Assisi. So I have those kind of feelings, and I just have to keep guessing that it's something to do with guidance and my guides taking me in this direction, and I'm following it.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Sita. So, how would you say all of this, from the little girl who lived in a family that, as you say, didn't have any spiritual direction or at least values that they would ever talk about, has changed through the whole journey, Bo and then beyond Bo and prison work?
I think, as I just said, maybe the biggest thing is my evolution has to do with faith and deepening that faith, that there's some kind of purpose in this world. It's not a chaos. It's very definitely not a chaotic universe. It's an amazing universe, and it's beautiful, and there's meaning to enduring suffering, to enduring joy. I mean, I've always loved the Rilke quote, "Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final." I don't get stuck in feelings because I know it's not final. I'm not very much into psychological stuff at all and looking at things in that kind of way. The most I do that with is, I don't know if you know the Enneagram a bit. So I do that a little. I'm an Enneagram 2, and I look at things. I mean, I do find that psychologically, I have some problems with people seeing me as somebody loving. That's always been an important factor to me. When I heard Richard Rohr say that in a podcast or something like that, I felt like I was kicked in the stomach. I felt like, wow, it's
And it's
it
hard.
wasn't. But what he was saying is that sometimes it's more important for you to have people see you that way than actually be that way. I went, oh, that hurts. I know that one. I know that one intimately, and that's the work I've done with the Enneagram. Is that
hard to be
specific?
admired or appreciated for the great loving work that you do. Yeah, that's the hard one.
Somewhat, and yet I'm sacrificing those feelings because I know it's important for people to open their hearts, and if they feel love for me, then they will benefit. You know, so I'm working on all that stuff at the same time.
Right.
I'm trying to look at that with guidance.
Okay, well, I think we can bring this to a close, but I'd and you just said some beautiful things that would bring closure, but is there anything else you'd like to add that you want to say, again, from all of your experience? Maybe, again, looking at the larger context of where we're at in the world right now, politically, economically, in terms of justice, in terms of climate. What do people need to hear right now?
Well, I've got two things, and one of them is kind of like a little gift to you at the end. But first, I want to invite people watching, invite you and anybody listening to this podcast about a practice that we do inside prison and outside prison called Together Apart. We meet on Wednesday evenings, and we're talking about you sit in your own altar, in front of your own altar, and from 7 to 8 on Wednesday evenings, you send love and light and blessings to the suffering masses in this world, of which there are very many, you know, of course. So I have people I mean, I've put it in the last couple years of newsletters. We may have thousands of people joining us at this point. I got a letter from a guy in Thailand saying, what time is it in Thailand? It's 12 hours different.
This isn't a Zoom. This isn't a Zoom thing. This is just everybody's doing it just on their own, but connecting energetically.
Yeah, right.
Wonderful.
Connecting energetically on Wednesday evenings,
Eastern time.
Eastern time. And if you can't make it, you know, if you're doing something between 7 and 8 Eastern time, anytime during Wednesday. I mean, I've found myself doing it on Wednesday mornings on occasion, and I've been doing it at least a couple years now. My dear friend on death row came up with this idea with a couple of Muslim brothers. They started doing this practice themselves. They wanted to find and believe that there was a way to help out in the world. And they started sending light and love on Wednesday evenings, and they invited me to join them. And that's how I started, and then put it in newsletters. It's an amazing practice. And I personally do, I mean, you asked me about my personal practice. I personally do 11 Hanuman Chalices. I'm connected to Hanuman, who was the perfect servant of God from the holy book, the Ramayana. And that's what I do as a means of sending light and blessings to people in the world. So now my little gift to you, unless you have another question.
No, let's close with that.
So my gift to you is that Bo and I were planning on visiting you decades ago. And I wanted to make you a gift. I did stained glass at the time. And I wanted to make you a gift of a mirror framed with a Native American design. And I wanted to hang from that mirror some hawk feathers, which I didn't have at the time. I ended up taking a walk in the road, and there was a dead hawk in the road. And I picked it up, and I took out his feathers, and I put him in the woods, and I bowed to him. And that night, I had a dream where he visited me. And I was standing in a big field, and the hawk was circling my head, but like a shark does. Really scared me so much. And I heard from outside of myself, take courage. And I did. And the hawk flew into me and kissed me. And then he did it again. He did it a second time. And I was a little less scared, but still scared. And I still heard from outside of me, take courage. And I did, and he came in, kissed me again, and he did it a third time. Circled my head, and this time I heard from within myself, take courage, dear heart, in the most tender way. And he kissed me and flew away. And you inspired that by my wanting to make a stained glass for you. Isn't that I've had that dream going with me for decades. And I'm so glad I got this opportunity to share it with you in this way.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. And we will, of course, stay in touch and be in contact. And I'll pass this along for many people who will hopefully watch and be helped by your wise and open-hearted sharings. Take care.
Thank you, Alan.